Radio TV phono nut here, and I'm sitting out under the carport while it's raining. And you might remember this Zenith TV that we fixed a while back. Let me turn this off and let the camera lens defog for a few minutes. But anyway, this is the Zenith set that we replaced the red video output transistor in. I think it was the red one. Heck, I don't remember. It was one of the three. And it's been working good for me, but it's developed an intermittent problem here lately where the picture will just intermittently go snowy and have lines in it, and it's progressively getting worse to the point where now it's pretty much snowy and snowier. And this camera lens still wanting to fog up. It's very humid out here today.
Conversation you want to have in the ride home.
Let's go, ready.
Yeah, you see all
Socializing with him anymore.
the lines that are flashing in and out of the picture.
Well, go on.
And then in a little while it'll just go snowy.
Find the information that you need.
By officers, white officers, that were less than
Advantage of them.
I know it's not the converter box. I tried a different signal source, the VCR, and it still did the same thing. I swapped my cables out. No change there. The only thing I did not change is the balun hanging off the back of the TV, the 75 to 300 ohm balun, but I don't think that's the problem. So we're going to have to open this thing up and physically stimulate the inside of the TV and see if we can find out what's intermittent.
It's all water. For a song right now, 0.
Go in after it.
Up forward. Where am I?
I switched it to channel 4 to see if it would still do it there too, and it is doing it there as well. Now the picture's kind of snowy.
Hey everyone!
Remember, for just $6 a month, you'll be able to relive today's show on DVD.
Now it cleared up and it got snowy, so something's intermittent. Let's pull the back and physically stimulate the inside of this TV.
The government and the
okay, at first I could tap on the tuner, and on this circuit board that's the interconnect board for the tuner, and it went berserk, and now it's straightened out. So
we know very
I think the first thing we need to do is resolder everything on that board as well as clean the tuner and see what that does. Tapping around on the main circuit board at first didn't cause too much disturbance, but tapping around up here on the tuner did. So
how he was chosen and by whom?
Given the symptom is what it is, snowy picture, that the tuner would be the first suspect.
Lights don't come off.
Now it's starting to act up again. It's starting to get dark on me, so now I'm going to remove the tuner assembly, which of course we have to pull the knobs off. And then I believe there's 4 1/4-inch bolts that hold the tuner assembly to the front of the cabinet, and then it just unplugs from the main chassis module down here. That's a nice thing about Zenith sets. Most of their TVs are modularized, and they were the last company to do that up until the very end, as a matter of fact. The last Zenith TVs, everything was just on one circuit board, and you could just change the whole board out. So we'll remove the tuner and unplug it from the chassis and take it to my workshop and clean the contacts and resolder all those connections, and hopefully that'll take care of the problem. My helper here thinks I need assistance with this project. Alright, here's the tuner assembly out of the TV, and you're probably wondering why I didn't just bring the whole TV down to my workbench. Well, it's because my workbench looks like a tornado ran over it, and there's not really enough room to put a TV up on here. So, but yeah, it's held in place by 3 1/4-inch bolts, and then there's the ground strap that connects right here, and then there's 2 cables that plug into the chassis. Well, actually 3, the IF cable and 2 other cables, and then of course the green UHF twin lead that goes to the antenna connections and the black VHF twin lead that also goes to the antenna connections. Alright, we need to resolder everything on this circuit board that contains some support components for the tuner, and then we need to pull this cover off and clean this thoroughly with contact cleaner while I turn the channel selector to get the cleaner worked in really well. Here's our label. 175-2259A is the Zenith part number. Date coded the 50th week of 83. I think the TV was made in April of 84, I believe, made in Taiwan. And here's our UHF tuner, but of course we don't have to worry about it since there's no more UHF. As long as this works on channel 3 and 4, that's all we need. Alright, I've resoldered everything on this circuit board. There were a couple of connections that looked a little bit iffy, but to my eye, they don't have to look iffy to be bad. They can have the most minute of ring crack in them, and it may look fine, but be intermittent. So the best thing to do is just resolder all of them. Now we're going to pop the cover off the tuner and spray down the contacts with contact cleaner, control cleaner, and then work the channel knob back and forth a jigging times to get the cleaner worked in to penetrate the contacts, and then we'll put it back in the set, and hopefully that takes care of our intermittent problem. Alright, here's the cover removed, and you can see there's a printed circuit board in here that I hope and pray the bad solder connection is not on that, because if it is, we're going to have a problem. In fact, it may mean trying to track down another tuner. But we're going to spray all these contacts down and work it back and forth, and hopefully that'll take care of it. Okay, I've hosed everything down and worked it back and forth about a jigging times, and it's getting late, so tomorrow we will plug this back into the chassis and see if the trouble persists. And if it does, then I don't know what we're going to do. I guess I'll have to attempt to take this apart and fix it if it comes down to that. Some of you might remember back in the day there were places that you could send these tuners off to and have them rebuilt. PTS and Castle Tuner Service are the two that come to mind, but the throwaway TVs and digital and flat screens and all that good stuff pretty much ran them out of business. So there's really no places left you can send these tuners off to that I know about, so we'll either have to fix this one ourselves or we'll have to track down a replacement. Now if this wasn't a hot chassis TV, I'd probably just modify it to have a composite input straight into the video output stage and just or the video amplifier stage, and just run the composite video and audio straight out of the converter box into the TV, but hopefully this tuner is salvageable. In the meantime, I'm just going to look on the internet and see what I can find for this part number, 175-2259A. Just see if I can by chance find a Zenith tuner that's not a ridiculous price. I mean, you'd think if these places had one, they'd just about give you one to get it out of their inventory, but that's not always the way it works. It seems like some of these places, the older the part becomes, the more valuable they think it is. And yeah, I like this TV, but I don't like it well enough to spend a ton of money on it, so let's just sleep on it tonight and see what tomorrow brings. So we need a Zenith. We need to look up a Zenith part number 175-2259A. Okay, I have the tuner connected back to the chassis. I have not installed anything yet. I want to let it run before we do that.
Speak to your sister? No.
An affair.
Let's turn around and see what the screen looks like. It's been on about an hour.
A boyfriend is confronted.
He crackles the taser inside the vehicle, then he opens the door.
When did your husband get a taser? He's never had a taser.
Well, so far, so good. Alright, I just beat on the tuner and nothing went haywire, so I'm going to let it run like this for a few hours, and if it doesn't mess up, I'm going to put it back together and go put it back on the stand and watch it. Now that'll be when it messes up. When I get it all reassembled and put back in its place, it'll start going haywire then. Okay, I did a search on this tuner part number and came up with one hit, a place called Union Electronics, that claims they can get the PTS rebuilt version. Claims it won't be available for shipment, I think, until January or February of 2021. It's $79 and some change plus shipping, so no, that will not happen. If it comes down to the point where I have to replace the tuner in this thing, I'll just either junk the set or wait on another one to come along from somewhere, but I'm not paying $80 plus shipping for a rebuilt tuner, and who knows if that listing is even valid. I've actually found some listings on the internet for older parts that seem to be available, but when you look into them, they're no longer available, and for some reason they didn't take the listing down. So we'll just have to see. Hopefully this tuner will hold up and we won't have to replace it. Alright, there's our cover back in place. One of my pet peeves is whenever I pull the back off of a TV or a radio and see that that such things as the tuner cover is missing, the high voltage cage door is missing, or the whole high voltage cage is missing, or tube shields are missing. A lot of times the tuner cover will be laying in the bottom of the set. Sometimes it won't even be present at all. To me, that just tells you that whoever worked on it was a lazy technician. I mean, come on, if you can't even be bothered to take the time to put the shields and the covers back in place, then that doesn't say much for you, in my opinion. Getting ready to put the tuner assembly back in, but before I do, let me show you my good old Exolite USA-made 1/4-inch nut driver. I've actually got two of these. This is the magnetic version. Then I also have the non-magnetic version. I've had these for over 20 years, but there's no telling how long they'd been sitting on the shelf at the parts house where I bought these. Before I had this, I had a Craftsman 1/4-inch nut driver from the start of the China era, and that thing would wear out. Seems like you take 5 TVs apart with it and it would be worn out and wouldn't grab the bolt heads anymore. Well, I could take it back to Sears and they never gave me any hassle. They just pitch it in the trash and hand me another one, and within a short period of time it would be stripped out and worn down too and wasn't any good for anything. Well, after 3 or 4 times of that, I got tired of the inconvenience of having to run back to Sears, so I bought these, and they're just as good today as they were when I bought them. So that's why I try to stick to these older USA-made tools when I can find them. So, if you need tools, hit up your estate sales and yard sales, and you can pick up these old USA-made tools for reasonable prices. You don't have to fool with the China crap that wears out in short order. And we have this insulator that mounts to the top right mounting corner. Yeah, don't forget to put it back. A lot of technicians didn't put these back either, and the way I figure it, if Zenith had an insulator there, they had it there for a reason, and it needs to be put back there.
How old are you?
Alright, I got the tuner back in, but the little cardboard insulator fell apart whenever I was trying to screw it back down, so I had to repair it with masking tape. I don't think it's exactly in there like it was to start with, but it's there, and I think its only purpose is for arc protection, to keep the possibility of something arcing from the power switch to the tuner chassis.
from whom you've accepted
And
rent.
really about the only way I could
And
see
he
that
paid the rent
happening
in
is if
September,
lightning
right?
or something
But
hit
at
the
some point
TV,
in September, realized that
or
this
maybe
wasn't
all of the
working out.
CRT
And he
diagrams
left
weren't in place, and
mid-September.
that's
He
not
came
the
back
case
to get
here,
his
so I don't
things.
think it'll be
And
any
his
issue.
bedroom door was
With Brad Pitt and Oprah.
All right, we've been on for several hours and it hasn't messed up. Okay, here's the 9-181 signal module out of the Zenith. It's not giving me any problems, but I figured I might better pull it out and inspect some high failure solder connections and some high failure capacitors that tend to cause trouble on this board. Because when I put the TV back in service, I don't want to have to take it out in 2 days to do something to it. Now, back whenever you could buy these boards as a whole module, I think there was one version that came with all of the plug-in ICs and transistors, but most of the versions didn't. You had to save your ICs, which is 1, 2, 3, and your 3 plug-in video output transistors off of your old module and plug them into your new one, which was kind of silly because what if one of those parts was defective? The main capacitors I remember giving trouble on this board is very rarely this Elna dual section 300 microfarad filter would go bad, but not as common as, say, the 4.7 microfarad boost filter that you see right here. And these caps back here in the vertical circuit would go bad, so we're probably going to check those and see what kind of shape they're in and resolder these stand-up power resistors and these vertical output transistors and any other components that look like they might be heat generators, and that way we shouldn't have any trouble out of this, hopefully. Now, one other problem these sets had was this Chroma IC here, the Jungle IC for the Chroma and video. 221-179-1. It's a Hitachi chip, and that was the one that gave trouble. The set would display a color picture, but it wouldn't be very faithful. For example, you might could set the tint control to have green grass, but the flesh tones would be kind of orangey. And if you set the tint control for proper flesh tone, then the grass would be kind of brownish looking. There's a way you can disable the automatic color correction circuitry in this chip. We have this plug here that's labeled 2B7, and you just simply add a jumper wire from this pin to ground here, and that will disable the automatic color correction circuitry in the chip, and you'll get a more faithful picture. I think there was an updated chip that didn't have that problem, but I don't remember what the part number was. But, you know, it looks fine with me with that jumped out, so we'll just leave it at that. And before we can get to the bottom of the board, we have to remove this insulator. And remember, when you're done servicing the set, put the insulator back in place. Well, I replaced the boost filter in the 100 microfarad cap in the vertical circuit. That one checked okay. The boost filter was a little marginal. Resoldered a bunch of iffy connections. Put the board back in, turned it on. TV's totally dead. So I'm going back through here to make sure I didn't accidentally plug something in wrong. All of these connections are labeled, but there's some that will plug into other places. They have the same pin out, but different numbering. So I'm trying to make sure I didn't accidentally plug one in wrong. And yes, I did have 2 plugged in wrong. I had 3D3 and 3G3 reversed. It's very hard to see on the circuit board, especially in poor lighting like this is. I just hope I didn't cream puff anything. Alright, is it going to fly or fry?
That's a check.
Aunt Joni's here.
For bundling made easy.
And we have high voltage, good.
Until 8 p.m. tonight.
And we're working. Yeah, the lighting's kind of bad, I know, but this board that stands up here, that's your high voltage and horizontal sweep board, and it separates from this heat sink here. In other words, if you replace it, you just can't take this whole thing off and get the whole thing. You have to replace just this board. And then this little tiny board over here, that's your startup board. That's what kick-starts the horizontal output stage when you first turn the television on. And then once that happens, the horizontal oscillator starts, and then the flyback takes over as far as providing the rest of the voltages for the set. And I'm not sure, but I think this little board does come with this heat sink here. I don't think I've ever replaced this board. I've usually repaired it when something went wrong with it. This board with the flyback on it, I've replaced lots of them. In fact, I've ran into these sets with this chassis where not one board, but both of them would be bad, and there'd be a fault on one board that if you didn't replace it, it would cause the other board to fail. So, yeah, sometimes these Zeniths could be a pain in the butt. I think out of all the System 3 chassis, the best one was the first generation one from, I think, 78. That's the one that still used a VRT-type power supply. It still had a power transformer in it and a 9-153 high-voltage module. And I think that set was only made for, one, maybe 2 model years, and then they introduced the one with the infamous 9-160 module, and those could be a pain in the butt. It got so I was pretty good at fixing them. And then after the 9-160 module-based sets came this particular chassis that was used in everything from 13-inch sets, 19-inch sets, 23-inch, 25, and, well, actually a 17 too, but yeah, 13, 17, 19, 23, 25, and I think there was a 27 that used a chassis like this. And then after this chassis, there was a similar chassis that had a stand-up high-voltage board over here, and then a stand-up power supply regulator module over on the left-hand side. I don't remember what the board numbers were. And then after that was the 9-470 module that was leaning more towards everything on one board. On that one, you had the video output module and the main module, and that was it. The 9-470, that was the one that had the transistors in the kickstart circuit that would always get cream puffed if lightning struck anywhere close to the TV. And then after the 9-470, that's when everything pretty much went to a single board, and I don't remember what the numbers were after that, but yeah, we're going to run this one some more. I know I should probably go through these boards too, but I'm just really not in the mood to. I want to get this set back where it belongs, and I suppose if something goes wrong down the line, then I'll address it then. Alright, here we are back together, and it seems to be working okay.
Was diagnosed with cancer after
shampoo.
I've physically stimulated the chassis and the tuner and all that. It won't act up, so all I can do is put it back on its cart and watch it until it does act up.
That are available.
And hopefully that won't be any time soon.
Is so chill that it's difficult to speak?
All has.
Yeah. So surprise, surprise, surprise.
Who are they? She won't tell you.
I'm hurting right now. How about you?
Well, my.
Ingalls?
But yeah, this thing has a decent picture.
I don't want to be on this moon a moment longer than I have to.
Unfortunately, no political debate on tonight for us to get some footage of.
Yeah.
to be persecuted and even.
I don't want that thing. Defense now, and
Almost like your position right now,
Because you're the first person to come in here.
All right, there we go. More to come later.